Item 2A, Reed Putnam Urban Renewal Plan. I believe, Mr. Cecil, you will be speaking on review the advance of SoNo Collection Underpass Plan and the Cecil's route memo to the Common Council for approval. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, just to put this in context, as part of the conditional approval of the conceptual master site plan for the SoNo collection, the Common Council put a condition on the underpass area that indicated that the agency in the city would hire a planning and architectural firm to review the final plan that GGP submitted with regards to the underpass area, and that firm was ultimately responsible for providing a technical memo back to the Common Council and the redevelopment agency with regards to that final plan. And it was indicated in the condition that if the firm was recommending approval of the underpass plan, that the Common Council and the redevelopment agency would not unreasonably withhold the approval of the plan and the memo with regards to the final plan. So with that, Steve can walk you through his memo that was made part of your package.
All right. Thank you. So the memorandum addresses two conditions. There was one condition that has to do with the pedestrian environment and the underpass, and I'm going to speak mostly about that condition. But there was another condition just prior to that that had to do with the length of the coverage over North Water Street. And during the course of the reviews and discussions and ongoing design reviews, the proponent put forward a modification to the design that, in our opinion, significantly improves the urban design and, along with that, better meets the criteria for the district. So I'll just mention that briefly. And the memorandum that you have has a few illustrations in the back of it. There are more specific questions about any parts of the plan. I'm sure we've got some images the proponent has brought. Some images along the way, but I think these should be sufficient to explain the idea. So I'm going to talk briefly about this first question. And there was a condition there that sought to make sure that the coverage that was represented in the CMSP was set in a way that would not be, in effect, increased. And a feature of the plan at the CMSP was what I've termed the light well above North Water Street that would have cut through several floors of parking in order to bring some light down at the North Water Street. In reviewing this, part of our concern was that the quality of the environment looking up through several layers of parking lot to a sky was not really creating as a significantly better environment. And by looking carefully at the plan, what the proponents came up with is an approach that provides a significant indentation and setback of the building mass above North Water Street on the east side. That would be down towards the riverfront, that side of things. Now, the drawings show this, but in the original design as presented in the CMSP, the facades, the layers of the parking lot ran all the way across the back side. I think it was the back side, the opposite side from the West Avenue side. And inside, somewhere in that parking structure would have been this light well. By creating, removing some of the parking and rearranging the parking, they've created more light and air coming down to the street and creating a much better receiving point, in a way, a real entry, indicating where North Water Street is, and using that edge to create a much more interesting facade. It has other benefits in terms of the elevations and the design of the parking garage facades that are part of the other ongoing design review and discussion. So for that reason, we felt it was significantly superior than what was in the CMSP, and have urged the acceptance of a revised language about that in the CMSP that the proponents bring forward. So if there are any questions about that one, maybe we just handle that right now, but it seemed very clear. It's much better. Yeah.
Just so I understand this, I have this schematic of this. Is it in this 8 feet, 8.25 feet, is that what the cutting is?
Oh, it's further than that. If you want to take a look, the best thing to do is if this memo, if you look at the very back page, it kind of gives you a better sense of what's going on here. If you can imagine, the very left-hand side of the top photo, the CMSP had a series of bands of parking that just ran across, and inside there, back inside there would have been a light well. What they've done is created a setback. You see where the picture on the bottom is, so that the parking structures are set back.
And I understand, I just can't tell how far back that is.
Is about 18 feet, like that. So as a result, there's actually a slight net increase. There's nothing that's been changed on the West Avenue side, but it's a rearrangement. Instead of having a light well, bringing that out to the outside. The dimensions are slightly different, and it has to do with the way parking works. It's about the width of a parking spot that is in effect removed as a result of this. But that adjustment seemed to be, on the whole, a very good trade-off. So that's what that's about.
Mr. Hanson?
Which side of the equation are we doing either or right now? You have the public realm and you have
We'll
the.
do, GGP is going to present the public realm.
The question about what is that material that they're trying to mask?
There are a number of different materials that are involved in that, which is part of the design review of the facade. What we've said is that at the master planning level, remember there's the master planning level and then the design reviews that are ongoing, but at the master planning level, what they'd indicated was that they would be employing different materials to, in effect, create a screening and an architectural sense on the building on the side. And I don't believe we're in a position right now to see, they've been moving ahead, we've been reviewing those along the way, and we're confident that they're fully meeting the CMSP intent on that. But the topic that we're discussing is simply that indentation, rather than how it's being fully designed.
Right. Can I just drill down on your question? You have a couple of different layers here, Doug. First of all, we're dealing with the review associated with the underpass. Then you're dealing with the public realm, and then there's the overall design review. In terms of the materials, the material boards associated with what the project is ultimately going to use in all phases or all aspects of the development, that's still a work in progress, and that's going to be taken up under the overall design review for the entire project.
All right, because I was under the impression the way this was worded here tonight, that this is what kind of we're signing off on.
You're signing off on the final plan relative to the underpass. That's the only thing that you're dealing with is
Okay.
how the underpass has been planned for.
Then I have a question about the underpass.
Okay.
Trying to figure out how to phrase this. I guess disappointed. I thought there was a great opportunity with modern technology, lighting, etc., that the ceiling of the underpass that would give it a sense of somewhat of space. And the way I'm reading it, unless I'm reading it out, the only thing that's happening with the bottom deck of the deck or the top of the ceiling of the entire underpass is it's getting painted white. Or steel.
Lighting plan.
It's in the plan.
There's a lighting plan.
Yeah.
But it's white with lights. There's, I'm going about what's in here.
We could describe that. We're kind of trying to take one topic at a time. So the first topic, and we're at a master planning level. Remember, the design's moving ahead. We're back at the master planning levels. The master plan lined up, have a good solution. And at the master planning level, what we're saying, just the first piece is that reorganizing the light well and having the building actually set back above the streets better and sets up a better arrangement. The next question now that we'd like to address is the North Water Street itself and the pedestrian environment that's created along that area. And so that's the condition that for which we were specifically requested to provide our recommendation for your consideration based on a review, and we've had an interactive process as the design has advanced. The status of the design is called, for the purposes of the CMSP, 100% design. It's been advanced significantly from where it was before.
And I don't,
Yep.
I don't disagree with you. There's a, I'd have to find the page, but it's here,
There's a light, this page is actually.
but it specifically says that it's encapsulating the steel underneath the deck in white and also painting it white. It specifically references in one of these 3 pages. I will find exactly for you.
Okay, well, so-
Specifically references the ceiling of that area. We painted white and the encapsulated steel in white. And
I will be able to describe what that ceiling condition is, and there are parts of it that would be white, but there are parts of it that have other characteristics too. It's a very complex ceiling that's been designed to create quite a lot of interest, I think. We're very, from a design review standpoint, that's one of the aspects that is dramatically improved from where it was at the CMSP level. So I'll get to that, and we have drawings of that, and I think they were part of your package overall,
Yes.
right? And we have some, we can project some drawings if we want to about that particular aspect or other aspects of it.
Just so that the committee's clear on the drawings that, relative to the lighting plan, they're labeled, I'm sorry, there's no numbers on them. Ceiling design goals, the page is referenced as reflected ceiling plan, and there's 2 of them, and then there's a lighting diagram.
And you're in North Water Street Design?
Yes.
The North Water Street Design.
It's section B, and just so that everybody can get a sense as to what they look like, this is what they look like.
so what you're saying though, that is not paid complete as of yet.
That is correct. What's not faded?
Even though I think the improvements they've done visually to the left and right as you go underneath there.
Yeah.
That's certainly improved, and certainly the entrance coming in from North Water Street. You know, the views a little more.
I guess
I'm sorry, so if you're telling me that it's not finished yet?
No, I was going to make a little presentation about the overall area and bring my recommendation forward. So I'm kind of at the beginning of that.
To clarify, the design plan is complete. They're done with the design.
This represents what we're calling 100% complete. What they presented to us and say, this is our design, provide your opinion. And the process was to go through, and what the condition talks about, 25%, 50, 75% phases. So we have, since December, been meeting extensively and exchanging documents, design ideas, concepts, reviews with GGP's team, including RTKL, its design consultants, to discuss how this particular part of the project could be advanced and meet the criteria. Now, this is always a question, what's the measuring stick? What is a good pedestrian environment? The urban renewal plan that you have for the area has some design standards and guidelines about what a pedestrian environment ought to be. And it speaks about connectivity and having vitality, comfortable places and safe places for people to walk and having interest, and other characteristics. So there are measuring sticks that we've been using to understand how this place could be changed. What our memorandum says is that we find that the current design meets the criteria, reasonable interpretation of the criteria as a pedestrian environment. And it does that by virtue of many significant changes the proponents made along the way. And I'm going to walk through what some of those changes are. In the previous scheme, the designs themselves were in outline form. They were master planning level designs. But having said that, we had very specific concerns about the south side of North Water Street. This is a portion of the project that is made difficult from a pedestrian circulation standpoint because of the location of the structure coming down, the location of the edge of the right-of-way, and the vehicular circulation that's underneath the building in that location. Under the plans at that time, various schemes were being pursued that would have required pedestrians to negotiate stairways, potentially a crosswalk condition across the slip ramp that we've investigated at great length, and be in a position where those crossings would be effectively concealed from drivers that were approaching. It was really not an acceptable solution from our standpoint, either in terms of safety and understanding that people who were trying to create a direct connection down to the riverfront from West Avenue didn't have a continuous view, didn't have a continuous sidewalk, and that was very problematic. What the proponent has done is taken a look at the circumstances along there. They have to accommodate handicap accessibility, but rather than concealing the sidewalk behind tall walls, retaining walls, and other features, they've opened it up with open railings, moved the sidewalk into much more visible locations, completely reconfigured the crosswalk across the slip ramp location, and animated that edge as they had been planning to do, but had pursued more with entrances and the storefront condition that would occur at the bottom of the street towards the east end of North Water Street. So there's now a continuous, effectively straight connection for pedestrians and sidewalks on both sides of the street. The elevations of the buildings, by that I mean the walls of that space, have been substantially developed. We had several concerns there. One was that the open parking decks would be opening into and be visible to this space. And they proposed a complex architectural screening and graphic and public art approach to those walls that will really animate them virtually continuously along the entire length of the facades. In that regard, there's a related concern that we had raised, which was the noise and the air quality within that space, given the fact that you have vehicles in that space and you have vehicles in the garage on either side. And we have committed together to the idea that we want to control that air quality and the noise, but it's not, it's a highly technical question about whether if we make solid walls of those sides, whether that would make it better or worse. So that's being studied, and the answer is whichever answer makes it better from the pedestrian environment standpoint. What we don't want to do is have a solution that seems right and it's actually noisier. We're trying to keep the noise down and the air quality high for the pedestrians moving along that edge. As far as the reflective...
Excuse me, can I interrupt you? I just, to that point, and I don't know if I'm reading this right, but it looks like the height of the area is significantly smaller or lower in the final plans than it was originally. Originally it was 46 feet, now it's 32 feet. Am I reading this correctly? That's what it says.
Effectively, the height should be about the same. There should, I'm not aware of any significant changes. It depends on where the height's being measured.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at this.
Floor elevations are effectively the same. There is a shift.
Can you see that?
Yeah, it's actually 41.7 feet. There's more structure, physical steel necessary because of the building. So it's 46.2 to 41.7.
Right, this it says 31 feet opening height here and you have 24 feet here.
Further up.
Yeah.
I think it's from, we can double check the.
I just wonder if that had an effect on the
We
exhaust.
can check
and
it.
things like
You're not.
that. It'd be a more compact area if that's in fact the case.
It's really the question of the noise and the air quality is associated with the fact that you have these really large parking decks on either side, and you have a volume. The decks are going to be ventilated. They have to have mechanical ventilation because of the way the building is designed, which will tend to be pulling the air up and out, which would normally, we would think, be pulling air into that space, but you have to think about the wind conditions and other conditions that could occur. So it's not a simple answer. But the proponent is committed to the idea that we want to have a solution that will optimize the air quality within it. So the size of this, there have been modifications along the way, and some of it is also where it's being measured from. But the basic idea of where the decks are located has been similar. Now there is, as far as we look upwards in the overall space, one of the concerns has been how the bridging between the two sides of the decking, the deck would occur, the parking areas would occur. And there's an important need for bridging between the two sides. And we looked very carefully at that bridge and what its visual impact would be. And the solution, which we support, is to make it very much a light structure. You can see it in the drawings that instead of being a structure that would have solid masonry walls and panels along the side, it's meant to be a thin steel structure so that it is clearly a bridge and not a parking deck that's crossing across. It's different from any of the other connections along the way. One of the things that we looked at very carefully and used three-dimensional modeling is to try to understand where that bridge would appear from the pedestrian standpoint from West Ave. And remember, there's the railroad alignment at the foot of the hill just past the project. And the alignment of the bridge seems to work relatively well to be aligned with where those that is as well. So we think that the overall effect is far more open feeling and will have more light than the original proposal would be, which is what our goal was to accomplish. As far as the ceiling is concerned and the lighting, what they've proposed is a series of planes with indirect lighting, which is called cove lighting, so that you have variation in the levels of the ceiling as a whole. And then inlaid within that are a series of bands. And they show that, those are the strips that are showing up in the diagram, the reflected ceiling plan. The reflected ceiling plan is a plan just looking up instead of down. Those have accent lights within them, and then there are accent lights that shine on the columns as well. At the outside, as you approach either entrance to North Water Street, the street lighting will be coming towards those entrances, but they don't continue in below. So the idea is to create a very light ceiling that has a great deal of variation and a lot of accents along the way. One of our concerns, of course, is to make sure that the space is not so elaborate that it becomes confusing. It has to be a place that people are making decisions about where to walk, where to go, where to drive, and we're satisfied that they have reached that balance in a very good way. They've used other kinds of techniques, and if you look at the entrance to the North Water Street alignment from the back, that's the last page in the handout, or the memorandum that we had written. You'll see, for example, that there are some bands underneath that bridge that crosses between the parking deck, and those bands would have, again, accent LED lights on them so that you begin to see that relationship. Overall, and I think we looked quite a bit at the three-dimensional modeling. We've done some modeling ourselves to make sure we understood what was happening. And one of the benefits of three-dimensional modeling today is that those surfaces can be modeled to be as though the light were actually on them, so that we get a sense of it not being a dark place, but just the opposite. Overall, if we take a look at all of the surfaces, all of the materials, the pedestrian circulation, the changes are really considerable, and we think that it reaches that threshold of that's associated with the urban design plan. And I have to commend the design. There's been the design team. Has been a lot of good faith testing of various ideas, modeling different points of view, discussing those in really clever changes in the plan. That this process that came through the condition afforded everybody to move this ahead. So that sort of summarizes what the memorandum is and the key points that we felt the changes that have been made accomplished.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have any questions? Josh?
No, I just, so you clarify for me a little bit what you just talked about. So I just want to make sure that the ceiling is still somewhat of the tunnel is under discussion or not, because I found the page, but I knew I marked it up.
Well, this is their final.
So this is it, we're done, or they're done.
In effect, we have to
City
remember
done.
that this has to move from where it is through construction drawings, and there may be some refinements, but it represents the design that we would expect it to have. If they didn't come forward with this design, then they would not be in compliance with their submittal. Yeah.
It's not numbered, so on the reflected ceiling plan, Tim, you didn't give me that. Yes, actually, on this one. That's why I'm just asking about the white, because everything in there indicates that everything on that ceiling is white.
I think the surfaces are intended, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the surfaces are intended to be white, but they're layered with lights come up. They sometimes they talk
It's hard to tell from
clouds. It is really hard to
That's
tell.
right, yeah.
So you really have to start to look carefully at the three-dimensional plans, and they provided a series of illustrations of similar circumstances, and I had actually suggested they remove a few of those because they weren't exactly the same. It might be misleading. But if you take a look at the perspective drawings that they have looking up underneath there, you'll begin to see that there are areas where there are white kind of surfaces. There are recessed surfaces above them. There may be some color changes, slight color changes in there. I'm not sure we know exactly from the renderings. But then there's a series of horizontal bands that have these accent lights within them, and again, accent lights coming down on the columns, so that the overall sense is of actually quite a bit of variation, and I think the accent lighting is going to help a lot. It will not be plain. That's, yeah.
Is
Way to
it,
read that flat is what it basically.
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's fine.
I was saying, is it safe to assume that, I mean, you're planning, or they're planning ahead for, to avoid the problems you see in tunnels with exhaust discoloration in the panels? It's all white, right?
Well, you bring up a really good point, and that's one of the reasons why the air handling becomes an important consideration and maintenance becomes an issue. I think that we have with a proponent like this, unlike some kinds of facilities, I can think of a few train stations that are not well maintained, and you see diesel exhaust really gathering on this. I think the intent, there is going to have to be maintenance to make sure that those conditions are kept up. They'll have an interest in doing that, but that could
I
certainly
think
be
it's
something.
important to note that the main entrance to the mall is actually in the underpass area, so that I think GGP is actually looking at this underpass as really the driving entrance of the facility in its total. And can you touch on the importance of that entryway in terms of what it adds to the underpass area as well, in terms of a visual perspective and just the general activity that's in
Right.
that glass box?
Right, so what happens is that people are entering, a significant percentage of the people who are going to be entering the complex are going to be arriving by car. And one of the problems that the designers have is orienting people, and you've all probably had the experience of going in great big parking lots and trying to figure out where you are and how do I get to the mall and how that works. So what they've done is to create near the entrance, and it would be on the left-hand side if you're coming from West Ave, and the right-hand side if you're coming up the street. Towards the West Ave side, a really significant glass lobby, so that everybody who's entering into the complex can see that. The majority of the cars will be entering right next to it, so that people can get to and from that that central core that goes up right into the mall. And there are actually some other entry points inside the structure that are similar, so that people can orient and move around pretty easily. And it's very important that they brought that out to the street edge, and that you really see that as you pass by. If you wanted to, you could walk from West Avenue down to that entrance, but it's going to be more convenient if you're in West Avenue to go into one of the other entrances or the escalators, et cetera, that will be coming down to West Avenue. But overall, this is an important front door for the complex, and so they've been really attentive to the idea that it needs to be well lit, be clear, and have a design quality that is inconsistent with the rest of the development. Our job has been to make sure that that the pedestrians who are in that environment, who may or may not be part of the mall experience, also have a good experience.
Steve, one of the major issues I had personally with the underpass was access to the rear of the building, I believe the east side, and pedestrian access specifically. And I'm happy to see, you know, I know we bounced ideas, the skylight, and the end resulting, we're calling it the notch.
Okay.
What, I know there's others on the committee that are curious, you know, what benefit, what improvements will this notch provide?
Well, you get, you're going to have any east sun moving in toward the south will actually hit the ground, and the benefits will be that, remember, the rail abutment is really close there where the bridge is. And so if you build the building right out to that edge, you're really in a very narrow, almost alley between the bridge and the building. And so by moving the North Street portion back, you're really opening up to the sky, to light, and you're also signaling. It's a very common architectural feature that we recess the doorways to signal this is where you come into the building or into the complex. It's inviting. And it's a natural kind of approach. And if you think about it, that's what's happening also on the West Avenue side. The stores are kind of opened apart, and you see the glass lobby. And I think people commented how nice that is to have the glass atrium of the central space in the mall really visible from West Ave. So the idea, as much as you could without really completely disrupting the vehicle circulation, which needs to link the two anchor tenants. Remember, one tenant's on one side and one's on the other, is to just pull that back in as far as we can. Then what can happen is that the architectural treatment that's on the outside can wrap into that as well. And that's the approach that they've been taking. So if you're seeing this whole complex from a distance, across the river, from the interstate, from the park, from North Water Street, and you say, I wonder where North Water Street is, you say, it's sort of right there, it's obvious where it is. You'll see it. And that's really what the benefit of having it done this way.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Christine?
Just for identification purposes, so I understand, is this one just to strictly ID what the city actually owns? Is that?
It has a
and
couple of,
if there's
yeah.
not, I wouldn't call it encroachment, but if there's something that's leading into the sidewalk, okay, that's all.
Right.
When I said right away, I'm like, well, wait a minute, now it's the city street now, right away. Okay. I'm just making sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Been there.
I'm trying to show where that
Somebody
is.
abandoned the street that we didn't know about?
And some of the pedestrian circulation needs to be within the property that GP has bought. And the sidewalk needs to make that transition, so we need to really carefully track where that is.
Certainly a big improvement.
It is.
Yeah.
Significant. And I want to echo what Steve said. I mean, no offense to Mr. Hennessy and to Larry, but dealing with the design team has really been a pleasure. They're a very talented team. It's been a
Pleasure for us.
It's been a great working experience with them, and the give and take back and forth has been very, very good.
And also, there was good sessions on both sides, and Steve, you looked out for the city's best interests, and thank you. All right, any other questions? I see none, I'll read the item again, and unless someone move it, please. Review and advance the SoNo collection underpass plan and the Cecil Group's memo to the Common Council for approval. Anyone like to move that? Mr. Sims, all in favor? Unanimous.
For anyone wondering, I'm not an official member of this committee. I might vote for it on Tuesday.